where I was in the Adoration Chapel at St. Thomas alone. It was 2 a.m. and I like screamed
What a
at
time.
the Adoration
That's
Chapel.
Wow.
I like yelled.
He receives us and he's like, yeah, I know you better than you know yourself, and I know the depths, yet still I love you, and yet still I choose you.
Like in my life, the more vulnerable I have been, like just like the better relationships I have, the
Yeah.
closer I go to the
there's
Lord,
so
the more
much
healing I have in my life.
My first like real experience with vulnerability didn't really happen until college. And I was invited into a small group my freshman year. And one of the things my small group leader did, which I think was really helpful for me, was right away being like, hey, this is a sacred space. Whatever we share here does not leave here. And like if it does, you know, we're going to talk about it and like there will be consequences, that type of thing. I think that was really important to hear for me because, yeah, growing up, naturally, men and especially myself are inclined not to share about things because we don't want to be seen as weak or effeminate or whatever. And so hearing that from the leader, especially from a man that I really looked up to, that like this is a sacred space, like you are free to share, was really impactful. And I think also to add to that, as a leader, he like set the bar for sharing. So early on, we would start talking about, you know, some deeper stuff, be it wounds or sins or whatever it is, things that we're struggling with as men. And he like set the bar by sharing and opening up. And as a little freshman that didn't really know a lot of the guys, but like seeing this man that I really looked up to opening up and sharing deeply, I was inspired to be like that and to open up and share. So I think those are really impactful for me, and those are things that I try to take back to Texas State, leading small groups.
In SPO and like the community that we're in now, like with guys who are like serious about their faith, like vulnerability is like something we talk about. And we talk about like being open, like you need to be open. Like these are the guys you're running with. Like if you are not open, I would say it's stressing like the fact of like we all know that we don't want to share. I mean, I think now, like I want to share now. Wes wants to share now too. But like when you're younger, and like when I was younger, even after like I'd shared before, it was still like, oh, like I gotta share again. Like this like is not ideal.
Yeah.
Just because like there still is like kind of shame and like past like not sharing mentality like going on. So like definitely now, like it is something we talk about it and something we definitely encourage. And like even like a newer guy event, like we emphasize it like at the beginning of smaller groups, like the beginning of the year, we're like, guys, like this is like a place that we're gonna share.
Yeah.
And like if you share, like you will be able to bring the level of depth like that you know your brothers like so much more.
Yeah.
And like so it's very encouraged now.
Yeah. I agree, and I think to add to that, like you were talking about casting vision early on for like why are we opening up? Why are we being vulnerable? It is one of those things, at least in my experience, that you can explain it as much as possible, but until you actually do it, you can't really understand like the forgiveness, the healing, the freedom that comes from it. But yeah, I would say it is crucial to encourage guys to do that early on, and also just to share witness to what God has done in your life by like opening up vulnerability. But yeah, I would say we do talk about it a little bit, but I think it's more so a small group thing. So a smaller group of guys, it's easier to be vulnerable with 3 or 4 guys than it is to be 20, 25 guys. What does it look like on the women's side of things? You said that like it's common to give like a big talk about vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like what does that look like?
Yeah, very similarly, like it's like what's said in small group stays in small group is like a pretty common thing that people talk about. And it's something that, in a very similar way is until someone shows it, no one else like really knows. And so it takes like that first person to like be bold and honest and be like, actually this is it. And I remember I was in a small group a couple years ago when a woman shared something, and I think that was the first time, because they're always like, it's really honoring when people share something with you, and I was like, what does that mean? I don't know. But she shared it and I was like, oh, like that cost something for you to share. And that was like the first time I was like honored. I was like, that was actually really like humble and honest and like, but the beauty, and then just like, it leads other people to share. And then once you are there, it's free. Like I think what you were saying, like there's so much freedom and like a release of shame, because everything that, like vulnerability is just like letting everything that's in there already, like actually like you're just being honest. Like it's not like most times, I don't know, it's just being honest. And I think there's just like a lot of freedom that comes with bringing things to the light.
Yeah. Thomas Hammond, shout out Thomas Hammond, used to say that like bringing things to the light releases the devil's hold on it.
Yeah.
And that's been like super powerful in my life.
Yeah.
Like calling it out right away. But I have a question for both of you.
Sure.
And
Shoot.
feel free to shut it down if you don't want to answer. But have you ever been like hurt by vulnerability? Has there been any experience? And maybe it wasn't directly you, but like you've experienced someone in your small group be really hurt by it. And yeah, like what's been your experience with that?
I don't feel like I've ever actually been hurt by vulnerability, at least now that I can remember. So don't grill me. But I will say, like, I totally remember the first time like I was vulnerable with my best friend. It was in college. You know, we all were Christian boys, and you know, kind of talked about it a little bit, but like we had never like really like shared. You know, and then finally, like, I remember just like sharing with him, like, just like what was going on in my life. And like he actually like received me like super well. I was like, dude, like that's so real, and like thank you for like sharing that. And like kind of like the freedom thing, or like feeling, would you say like the devil like kind of like letting go. You're like kind of not having that hold, and like I just remember feeling like lighter and just like, man, I like don't totally suck as a human being, and my friends won't reject me. Because I was like, man, I was like, my friends are just gonna like think I'm an idiot, and like I'm just like not a good person at all. And so I honestly I didn't get hurt. Like thankfully like I got a big hug,
that's
you know,
awesome.
which was huge.
Dude, that's huge.
But so that was kind of my, honestly, I don't know if I've been hurt by vulnerability. But how about you, Catherine?
Yes, I have. Honestly, I have had many experiences where I have shared vulnerably and I've been received like so well, and that has been, it's been so healing. Like, well, I mean, I'll end with the good. But yeah, I think there's been a couple of times where I've shared something that's hard, and then someone like does it, like, oh, it's really hurtful when you do this, and or when someone else did this, and they're like, yeah, that is like, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And then like the next day they like do the same thing, and I was like, listen, I just told you my heart. But I think that like has taught me a lot about mercy, of like I am imperfect, and that's like I can't just expect, because I was vulnerable and they heard me and like received me well, that they're like, that's just gonna flip the switch in their head. They're gonna be a different person. You know, like we're all growing, and I think that has taught me a lot about mercy, which is good. But I have been in many like relationships where I have shared vulnerably and have been received in a way that has been healing. I think part of my story is like there's a lot of grief in my family story, and I think I was always afraid to like share it and be like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to bring the mood down. People are just be like, oh, I'm sorry, that's sad, and it's gonna get awkward. But there's like a couple of times where I was able to share, and it was like scary because I wanted to be received well. And there's like a particular time where I shared with my house, and the women just like loved me so well, and throughout the whole year just like kept coming back to like what I had shared, and like validated it, and was like, this is like a real thing that you're experiencing, and like we want to be in this with you, and we want to love you in this. And that was just really powerful, and like brought a lot of healing to these other areas where I had been hurt, and was like, okay, this is actually a really good thing. And like there's a lot of beauty in being able to like share and open hearts. But yeah.
And I was just gonna say, it's like crazy though how much like vulnerability like unites people together.
Yeah.
Genuinely, because then you actually like know the person. Like there's no fluff. There's no like, yeah, but like who really is Aaron? You know, like I kind of like I know him. Like he's cool. We play basketball together, but like who is this guy? And like you're actually like, oh, like I know that guy, and he's like actually like been through some stuff. And like that, like genuinely, like for me, like that's super uniting, which is so cool.
Well, it's uniting, and it's also just like it takes us out of our own heads, and it's so like the antidote to isolation. Because I think when
Yeah.
when things happen
on.
and we get hurt, we're like,
That's awesome.
it's just me. I'm the only one that's experienced this, the only one that's done this, and that's like the shame. And then you share with one person, they're like, me too. And you're like, are you serious? Like,
floodgates
not
are
just me?
open.
And then you
That's
meet
awesome.
another person and it's them too, and you're like, all right, we're getting somewhere.
100%.
So
Yeah.
it's like, it's unifying because you actually know the person that you're with. But then there's like, it's just like, there's no more isolation because it's like, we're all just struggle bussing, but like living fully. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a fuller
So true.
life, which full of all the good things too. You know, it's just a gift. But
Aaron, have you been hurt by vulnerability, man?
Well, yes, but before I answer that,
Oh, okay, yeah, please.
yes, I have.
Vulnerability is the antidote to loneliness. Trademark Catherine Key. That's awesome.
yeah,
Come on.
that's fantastic.
All right, yes.
Yeah, it's isolating.
Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, I have. I think one distinct memory sticks out in high school. I was burned pretty bad by like a group of guys that were like
Sure.
my best buddies. That then through a series of events, I was like dating this girl, and then we broke up, and then she started dating another guy, and then like my friend group basically like left me and started becoming friends with them, and it was like really bad. And I was like telling them about like how it hurt me, and they just like didn't really care. And so that was really hard and hurtful for me. And
Sure.
I think it really impacted how I saw brotherhood. And it just like impacted the way that I interacted with guys.
Yeah.
And so going into college, I was really afraid to open up to guys in the same way, especially guys that became my friends, because I was like, well, you know, if I open up, they'll probably end up burning me again and
Sure.
just like leave me out in dust. And that just completely changed when I was in my small group, and I experienced like true vulnerability through like trust and love from the other guys for the first time. And honestly, like because of that vulnerability, because I opened up and shared about my experience being burned in high school, like I'd never really told anyone that.
Sure.
Like, not even my parents. I was just like too afraid or ashamed that it was my fault, that I did something wrong.
Tough to be vulnerable.
Yeah, it's tough to be vulnerable.
It is. Man.
But really, like the beauty through it was that when I shared about it and when I opened up about this being burned in high school, I was able to forgive all of those guys.
Dude, it's
And
huge, man.
I lived with two of them for like
Yeah.
a year, like
Really?
2 years after I opened up about it. Like they are now some of my best friends again, after like we didn't talk for years. And it's just amazing, like the power that God works through vulnerability, through forgiveness, through healing. Because honestly, if I didn't meet SPO, if I didn't go into that small group, if I didn't share, like I would not be friends with these guys anymore, which would have been really hard because some of them were like my closest buddies in high school. But and since then I've been able to talk with them about it and be vulnerable even in that conversation. Like, hey, let's talk about this. This has like hurt me years ago. Like, can we address this?
And you guys have like reconciled.
Oh yeah,
completely,
we've reconciled, and
which is awesome.
Yeah, reconciliation is key.
Yeah.
It's like so important especially in interpersonal relationships. Just like when something hurts you or when someone does something to hurt you, like being vulnerable and being honest with them, because that's like the foundation. Communication is the foundation of relationships.
Communication's key, man.
So
That's what they say.
yeah, but
No, you
I just say I think this parlays into like vulnerability, like with God. You know, like what does that look like in your guys' life? I can go first if you want. But yeah, sure. And like I've got to be real with the Lord, or like if I can't be real with God, like how am I going to be real with others? You know what I mean?
Dang,
Like
yeah.
like God knows you in like completeness, and like other people, like you try to let them in, right? But you don't even know yourself completely. And like so if you're not real with God, like you just really can't be real with others. So like for me, like I have to be vulnerable with the Lord, but it's also scary, you know, because then you're like kind of like you're putting yourself out there again. You're like, man, what are you gonna call me to, Lord? You know, you're gonna make me move again? You know, like what's going on? So yeah, that's been my experience. How about you guys?
Well, it's interesting that you say, or that you said like you didn't really want to share or be real with God. It's almost like, you know, when you break something as a kid and your parents,
They already know.
yeah,
They already know.
your parents know.
Like, oh, frick, man.
know,
Tell me what
yeah.
happened.
Yeah,
The reason that they do that isn't because they want you to fess up and feel some sort of guilt. It's because they want to show you like their love and their mercy, and let you know that like despite this failure, like I still love you.
Yeah.
And like I forgive you.
Yeah,
you know,
for
but if
sure.
you don't own up to it, then how are they going to be able to show that mercy?
Yeah.
But that's
so
beautiful,
true.
man. Yeah.
I am really honest with the Lord, and that has been such a gift to, and like fostering like He's my father. And I think there's something that happened a couple years ago in my family, and I was so upset and so like angry, and I was like, all right, they told me to be honest how I really feel. So, and I was, and I have asked the hard questions, and I've been like, Lord, I really don't want to do this right now. And like, I think, yeah, like He already knows. Like He already knows that I'm thinking these things, and not in like an oppressive, like I know everything, but like a gentle, like I actually already know, but there's like, but I want you to come to me. And I think something that has just blessed me is like, when going to the Lord is like, it's not like what I'm saying, it's the fact that I'm going to Him. And so like when I go to Him and I'm like, I don't understand, this hurts, He's like, come to me. Like, if this is what's bringing you back to me, and that was like something that I realized was like, okay, if this is actually the thing that's bringing me back to the Lord, then I want it. And I think
That's really good, yeah.
I just like, He can take it, and like He wants to hear our thoughts and our like, we're His children, like parents want to hear how their kids are doing, and I think we're so afraid of like, oh, like I can't say bad things because you're God. And He's like, listen, I already know. And just like, let me have it. And there's just such a grace to like be in relationship with the Father that you can actually be honest with Him. And then you hear His voice, and you hear like the truth that He speaks and the love that He speaks, and like what you were saying of like, He receives us, and He's like, yeah, I know you better than you know yourself, and I know the depths, yet still I love you, and yet still I choose you. And I think that has just been, that's like, it's like kind of fun. That's one of my big things when I'm like with women and they're like, I don't know. I'm like, listen, like with God, they're like struggling. I'm like, tell Him, like He wants to know. So I think that is just one of like honesty and vulnerability with the Lord is just so huge because it's so powerful, and it's so like, it changes our heart. It doesn't, He still loves us, but it like, there's such a change in our heart, which I just think I've seen in my own life in a really powerful way. But,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Something my mom told me once was, I would rather, I don't know how it came up, but she said that I would rather have you like scream at me and yell at me and cuss at me than just not say anything
then
at all.
not talk to me.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like, be honest. I mean, think about when you're with someone and you're like, I know that you have this thing against me. Just say it. Let me know. And now we can go somewhere, because if it's like not said, it's like, well, it's just awkward. Like, I'm not talking to you. You're not talking to me. We're just like walking on eggshells. But if you're actually honest, it's like we can actually go somewhere from there. Like, you can talk about
that's when the
something.
healing can actually start to take place.
Exactly.
I would also say, this past year in particular, I've really started to be vulnerable with God in ways of like I can get angry with Him, and I know He can take it. There is a time, it actually wasn't this past year, it was a few years ago, where I was in the Adoration Chapel at St. Thomas alone. It was 2 a.m. and I like screamed at the Adoration Chapel.
Awesome.
I like yelled at like the Eucharist, and it was kind of like almost like an out-of-body experience. As soon as it happened, I just felt like this huge weight lifted off my shoulders as soon as I like got it all out into the open and like vocalized it. And it was around that time that I realized like, wow, God like isn't angry with me. Like He really loves me and wants to take like His yoke off my shoulders. And so since that, I've started to understand what it means to be really honest with God. And similarly to your experience, since I've been since I'm opening up more and more with God in prayer, there's been times where He's like pushing me in a certain direction in prayer, or like encouraging me to go somewhere, and I'm like, God, I don't want to do that. Like, please,
please,
don't
Lord,
tell
please,
me.
Lord, don't make me do that.
But since, I mean, it's been good. It's been challenging, right? Like, God doesn't want us to just stay where we are. He wants us to grow, especially deeper in relationship with Him. And so through the grace of God, I've been able to say yes to those things. And but one of them being mission, years ago. But yeah, also with that, I think throwing the Holy Spirit into the conversation, I read this book, Dangerous Men by Lowell Seashore, and he has this part in the book called Believe Anyway. And it's essentially this, like when you are honest with the Lord and you go before Him and you ask for the Holy Spirit, like the Holy Spirit is going to move and like give you certain inclinations or urges or like move you in a certain direction. And our job is to just do it and just believe it anyway. And what that looks like more practically is like you're walking down the street and you're walking next to this person and there's this urge to just like pray with them right now. Like stop, go up to them, pray with them. And it's so vulnerable. It's so vulnerable.
So vulnerable, it's scary.
And,
you know what I mean?
But this believe anyway mindset, just doing it, is like putting radical trust and vulnerability in God and vulnerability in the Holy Spirit. And by doing that, we actually learn to discern the voice of God more clearly. Because by listening to the voice of God, by listening to the Holy Spirit, there will always be like fruit, right? Like there will always be good things that come from that. God doesn't want to confuse us. And so the more we do it, the more we'll be able to discern, like, is this my voice or is this God's voice? And that's been something I've been trying to step into a little bit more recently. But it's vulnerable to go up to someone and be like, hey, I don't know you, but I just wanted to offer this to you. Can I pray over you? Or is there something that you need prayers for? Or even taking it a step further and be like, I think your ankle is hurting. Can I pray over your ankle?
For healing right now?
I've never done that, but I know people that have, and it's awesome. Like what comes out of that.
And I liked how you said about the vulnerability. Like the more you do it, like with the Lord, like the more comfortable you are. It's just like with people. Like it's the same, very similar relationship. Just the more you do it, the more you're okay with it, and the more like you receive from it. Honestly, the more vulnerable you are. Like in my life, the more vulnerable I have been, like just like the better relationships I have, the closer I go to the Lord, the more healing I have in my life, the more confident I am as a person, like in myself and my identity as a son of God. Like I don't know, like vulnerability is generally like honestly life changing.